Huh. Okay, I am having a little bit of trouble here. I'm so sorry. With it connected to Restream. All right, here we go. It's preparing. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me?
alienation as children?
I don't think there's a legitimate, unless there's some abuse, unless there's like physical abuse. I don't get involved in delaying. I think you can provide a holistic wraparound service as you're taking the alienated parent through the process of reunification. We have a 4-phase process, and the therapy of someone's background is a part of that. But I'm not, for me, I don't specialize in parental alienation, but I do see it. And when we have those moments and those issues, we do bring experts in who we know are a part of that. I've talked to Dawn about a few things a few times. I've talked to Jenna Noble. I've brought other people into the equation because I'm not an expert in that. You can't be an expert in everything. And so we're going to bring people in who assist with that, but we're a wraparound service. We're going to provide it while we're going through. And if we see some red flags, I have had a person, he's probably emailed all of you. When you find out that someone is an abuser and that's not a false allegation, you have to back away. You have to trust that and know that that's something else they need to go deal with. And I can't help them with that. And I'm not going to feel bad about not being able to help them, but I can give them the resources to get the help. And if they choose not to, then I have to move on. But we're going to provide it all at the same time. I don't feel like there's a legal reason not to reunite someone due to their childhood trauma, unless it's like physical abuse.
Gotcha. I'm sorry, Caroline, did you have another question?
No, some people are having trouble typing their questions in Q&A, so I'm trying to follow along as best as I can.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we're working.
I got a question for Tori. Dr. Tori, do you also deal with clients that do face issues of physical abuse and help them to realize where they may have gone wrong and help them to, try to reunify their relationship with their children outside of the physical abuse? I do. So let me tell you, there are therapists who work with us. There are domestic violence individuals that I've become friends with over the years, and I'm going to say, what is the barrier between these two situations and who can we contact? What's a good resource for them to have? I'm a connector in life, and over the years I've gotten a lot of people who I've just been connected to, and I realized, you know what? I can utilize them now. It's always pulling from your hat and realizing who can you use for this person, and it's tailor-made. Stop using the same person for everyone. It doesn't fit. Every person doesn't fit every situation. And so I have to be discerning and instinctual on who's going to work. But yes, there are dads that we have, they have drug abuse problems and we've sent them to drug rehab. It's like, let's get that worked out while we're working on your legal aspect. Let's get the abuse part. Like, who are you? What is the problem? We've actually reunited fathers with their fathers while reuniting them with their children. That's happened multiple times. And the issue was they weren't with their fathers and they were angry and they were struggling through things that they had been taught as children. Right. A lot of these fathers are fatherless. Mm-hmm. And the pain is coming from that place. And I see Robert asking me, how did I come into this work? I was actually, in your terms, I was an alienated child. I grew up without my biological father, met him at 31, and reunited with him. And one of the people who came to be with me during this weekend and the support is my father's widow. My father passed 2.5 years into me knowing him. Dawn and I have very similar stories. And my father's widow is very instrumental in my life. And to be able to share some of the things about him this weekend, we were sharing stories, and I learned more about my father this weekend being with my bonus mom, even after 16 years of being reunited with him, but he's been gone 13 years now. But having her, she's always sharing things that I didn't know about him. And that's been the beautiful part. But yes, Junior, I definitely understand what you're saying. Yes, healing is available for everyone. Right. That's some of the work I try to do with also parents that can be abusive. I try to gauge where they're at and try to create solutions or make suggestions of where they may have gone wrong and try to tone down the environment a little, right? and help them, guide them, in order to not be so abusive or, to change their ways. So that's some of those type of work I do up here. I'm glad you do that for mostly fathers, but also mothers as well. Everyone needs it, even including children.
I would like to point something out that I've noticed is, yeah, you're talking about this generational pattern of that, you know, just consider that every parent has in their mind the best interest for their child. And if they think that because maybe there might have been domestic violence between them and their spouse, in their mind, they're protecting their child from that domestic violence, which it's totally different. It might be a very divisive, situation that triggers each other, but the parent-child relationship is altogether separate. But the protective parent is going to do whatever it takes, especially if they didn't have a father in their life. They're going to try to control the situation. So really, I try to say that whether you're a targeted parent or you're the one that's targeting, there's personal healing that needs to be done individually, along both sides. I've seen it where a family is perpetually in supervised visitation situation that goes for years on end, and that person is living into a narrative that, oh my gosh, my child will not be protected unless they are in a supervised situation. And they just keep going on and on and on. So who needs the healing here? Is it the parent that needs to be supervised, or is it really both of them?
Both. It's both of them.
Yeah.
They didn't accidentally meet each other. They didn't accidentally, I'm assuming, they didn't accidentally come into this relationship. No one was manipulated in that way. I get that conversation a lot. A lot of times we're attracting the parent that we're trying to resolve the issues with. So many of these fatherless individuals, they are attracting the same type of abuse, the same type of alienation, the same type of rejection and abandonment that they experienced in their childhood that they haven't resolved.
Yeah.
And so they both need the healing.
I totally agree. Totally. All right. So who have we not heard from yet? We haven't heard Dawn's story. I haven't heard from Stan and Todd. Who else wants to chime in? We've got Dawn. You are a child who was, as a child, you were taken away from your father, and you had to track him down to have it. So you were a child of alienation. So tell us a little bit about that.
My story starts off where first I was abandoned by my mother, who had left me with my father for about 2 years. So he was my sole caretaker for that time. And then she came back later after remarrying, and they had a full-fledged abduction in LA. And they had a getaway car. They had a houseboat available to them for an entire week to hide me out on while LA was looking for this missing child. And then they had an airplane on the runway ready to taxi as soon as I was on board to take off and just whisk me away. So it took a little bit over a week to get me out of the state. But they eventually moved me from California to Colorado. And then things just happened from there. I had a replacement daddy almost instantly. I was told as soon as I was put in the car, this is your new father. Your other father no longer exists. And anytime I talked about him, it was redirection and telling me, no, that's not your daddy. This is your daddy. And I had a new house, I had new toys, I had new clothing, I had new everything. So nothing was familiar to me. And that kind of put me into this twilight zone or an identity crisis because I no longer knew what was up and what was down. And on top of that, I was also in a period of 8 years violently abused and almost murdered several times by one of the new family members. So it was a very traumatic experience and then continued, like it just didn't end. And it took me 44 years to find my father, but anytime I tried to ask my mom about him, she would shut me down. She would say things that would just scare me and not want me to ever look for him. She told me if I ever met him, I need to be carrying a gun with me just in case because I need to protect myself because he's such an evil man. And I think I have memories and thinking, I don't remember that. I don't remember him being, I was never afraid of him. Now I was young, but I have a lot of very vivid memories of him. So when I'm told all this stuff, I don't want to believe it. But then when I see, okay, so where is he? Why isn't he here? Has he sent me Christmas cards? Did he call me on my birthday? These were questions that I also asked my mother, and she told me, no, we've never heard from him. So she let that sit and rot in my brain, and she let my own opinion tarnish of him because there was no evidence that he cared. So there was a time where I'd be on a roller coaster trying to determine, do I care or don't I care? Well, I don't really care right now because as when children are angry, they don't necessarily process things accurately. So I had no idea what I really felt or what I really wanted. I just knew I was mad, and I knew I wanted him in the beginning to come and rescue me and take me away from this hell. But then I thought, but I don't know anything about that either because that could be a whole other type of hell. So it was constantly on a teeter-totter. Do I want to have him? Do I want to look for him? Maybe I don't. So it took 44 years to finally find him. And when I did, as soon as I heard his voice, I knew that none of that was true. That the familiarity in the sound and the tone of his voice, and then when I got to see him for the first time face to face, that familiarity also came back, and I just knew that this was not the person that she made him out to be. So that also helped in our healing and being able to put a lot of this behind and hear the truth. And one of the things that he was very, very careful about is that he never, even after all these years and after all the pain that he had endured, he never bashed my mom. Even 44 years later, he never said an ill word about her. He just said, I would ask him a question and he would think about, do I really want to answer this because it may not sound right. He would say, first of all, I'm going to start with, I still love your mother. And then he would answer the question. So he was very, very careful about how he answered me so that I was confident and secure and felt safe to ask him questions. I didn't feel him coming back to attack me. So I think that he had a really good way to address the questions and concerns that children naturally have. We have that deep inside instinct, curiosity question that just kind of eats away at us. And we want to know those questions, but sometimes our emotions kind of make it confusing and we act out with anger when we're really just so curious. We just want to hear the words we want to hear, but we don't understand what's going on. So a lot of that just kind of went away. And I just felt this calming comfort of being around him all of a sudden. So it worked out really great for me. And yeah, 44 years, a lot of parents don't want to hear about that kind of time frame. And I certainly don't want anybody out there waiting for 44 years. That's why I'm out here sharing my story, because we don't want that to happen to other parents. I don't want what my dad went through to happen to any of you. And I don't want other children to go through what I went through. Mm-hmm. So talking and sharing this information isn't about each of us as an individual. It's about all of us as a collective. And we all have to start expressing our voices and sharing these stories, because people are going to become more and more familiar and understand the terms and what actually happens. And then they may be able to recognize it. And once they recognize it and they can see it and apply it in their lives, we're teaching our communities to be on the same path and the same goals as we are, is to prevent this from happening.
Yes. Good. Yeah. What I hear is that it's about coming from a space of love in educating the community versus hate and outrage. And that's where ultimately you might get immediate attention with anger and fear, even in the court. You might get, a judge to rule in your favor because you're so afraid. But over time, the best course of action is being in a space of love and compassion for your child and even for the other person. Just last week, I had in March, my children, their father passed away. And So, they're all in their 20s. They don't know what to do and stuff like that. And I got the honor of helping them to respectfully and honorably bury their father. And that wouldn't have happened if I was this person who was, I hate him and all these negative things. I'm not saying that I was perfect over the last 20 years, but I would say, I just kept being a stand for the children to have love and affinity for both parents. Was why it was I got the honor of helping my children through their grieving process.
Well, and we got to witness that. Some of us got to witness that, and it was really a beautiful thing to watch how you were able to step in, and none of what happened mattered at that point. You were there for your children. And what I think is really important, what I try to share with other parents, is that I want you to be able to reunify with your children, but we don't want that just one day. Mm-hmm. We want you to get invited to lunch, come back for dinner. Hey, come over Christmas morning. Would you walk me down the aisle? These are the things that we want parents to be able to achieve. And that means there is a lot of work and healing and sharing this information. Like with Mark, he has a job working as a substitute at the school. It's a beautiful way. One, it does two things. His son has an opportunity to see him, but also other people have an opportunity to see him as an advocate or a volunteer in a position that he is respected. And that is huge. That's an excellent idea. That's a good place to put yourself in these situations, as hard as they can be. But things like that help get you a little bit closer. Caroline?
Yes, thank you, Dawn. I'm excited because I've got 4 questions here for you. So let me start with
one second before you start, Caroline, because I want to layer into what Mark was doing with the school. And myself, I'm part of the school board, part of the school council. I was a parent representative for my daughter's ward, and I'm trying to do the same thing now that she's moved into another area of Canada, trying to do the same thing there. And it's very important that you are present as a parent in whatever aspects you can be, especially with education. And it shows a lot to your children, and it shows a lot to the community in general. So I just wanted to say, Mark, that's a very good thing that you're doing, and continue. And to others, even there's some attendees that are here that have done the same. That's one of the best things that a parent can do, is to continue to be involved, especially in education. It's one of the easiest things you can do.
I think that's a huge point, because the thing is to not work on the relationship side and only focus on the court side is really going after the booby prize. You're not getting, the big win is the relationship. And it may not look how you wanted it to look like with 50-50, timeshare and everything like that. But if you invested yourself in going after the relationship, while doing what you have to do in court, it's a win-win. Okay, so Siobhan, before you ask the question, Caroline, I'm sorry. Siobhan said that she's got to bounce real quick. Before you go, can you would you like to say some final words before you step out?
Yeah, so thank you for having me on as a panelist. I have enjoyed hearing from all of you, and how much you've overcome. And that's amazing to hear, especially from the lawyer's perspective. So I'm a family law lawyer. I'm also a certified divorce coach. So I also try to help coach my clients and the families that are going through some of these things as well. But it's so great to hear the things that you guys have overcome and what you're out there doing to try to bring awareness and education into this area, because trying to deal with this inside of the court system, as I mentioned before, with a system that doesn't necessarily think that it exists, or that it's that much of an issue, or trying to help educate judges and other attorneys and all, and everyone involved in the importance of why children need to be with both parents, with equal time, and how much that is so valuable to them. And, Danica, I had my video off, but I will admittedly had a little smirk when you mentioned something earlier that said, we kind of come from a view of, parents are looking at what's in the best interest of their child. And maybe I'm jaded being a family law attorney, but I see, in some of the highly contested family law cases that I do, that parents are coming from what's in it for me and what's best for me, not the best interest of the child, where we should be focusing. And so trying to bring people back to, the best interest of the child, and your child deserves to have, a relationship with both parents, and you need somebody in your corner fighting for you in your corner if you don't, and helping you through that system. And so making sure you have a good team of people behind you. Mark, I am in Florida to answer your question. Thank you. And I think that it's so important, and I am glad that I have been here with all of you, and to know that you are all in our love and everyone's corner, and that we can lean on each other as we fight for the families that are going through this.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you so much for joining in on the panel. I appreciate you. We have, let's see here, and let's see. Caroline, you had some questions?
No, I have 6 now. So should I go?
Yes, because I don't want to lose Dr. Burnett. I want to also bring him back in on those who didn't get into the early part of the conversation. I want him to talk about the 5-factor, just like real quick. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
So when I ask these questions, some of them feel like they're could be to anyone who knows the answer, and some of them feel like they're directed to Dawn. But try and keep the answers short so we can get over to Dr. Burnett again. So the first question I have, are any panelists a gateway or representative to agencies or organizations that specialize in addressing malicious abuse of process, malicious prosecution, perjury, or bad judicial officers that conspire to abduct children away from their biological parents? Anybody?
Well, I think a lot of this is still in the process, and I think a couple of these questions can be combined, because I can see Valerie asking questions as well. So I know that Dr. Burnett, Amy Baker, there's a lot of people that are working on the forefront as far as the parental alienation, and also my partner, Louise Price-Tobler, who wasn't able to attend today, but she's currently working on a PhD. She's a candidate studying a treatment protocol for adult children who have experienced parental alienation and/or abducted as children. And then as my portion of it is, I look at the legal aspect, and I also include the cybersecurity and the safety side on how important it is to provide a secure environment system for preventing some of these things from happening, especially abduction by a parent or a family member. So together we've partnered and created Humanly Possible Channel, which is a Facebook page. And we've interviewed other adult survivors, and we'll be starting to do some more interviewing as it relates to her PhD. And so it'll be official interviewing and studies being done. And then also, we've also interviewed other experts from the world, like Dr. Burnett and Dr. Torrey. And I mean, a couple of you on here I've interviewed. Actually, I think almost all of you we've had the opportunity to interview as well. So we're definitely trying to root out solutions. I think a lot of us are all focused on solutions, and every little bit helps going towards being able to find that, being able to change laws. I know Mark works a lot with the federal law aspect side of things. A lot of us also work on other levels of law, maybe on a state level. So there's a lot of things that are definitely going on, and I'll let Mark talk more about the federal side if he'd like. But the counseling and programs, Dr. Torrey does some of the counseling programs there as well. Elise will be coming. Dr. Burnett works with the PASG. So yeah, I think these questions can kind of be summarized. And at this point, I'll let Dr. Burnett and others take it from there and add their pieces to it.
Well, I'd like to add something really quick, because you didn't answer the one on bereavement. I mean, there's people. I could probably answer this offline, because I don't want to take away from any of the panelists who have this other information that you might be looking for. But I work with people who are in grief and who are going through a lot of anxiety. And so the one question she asked, how do the courts manage alienation issues when there's bereavement? They don't. and
I know Valerie, and I know her story, and she lost her father as well, and we do need to have some of these protocols or some of these counseling therapies in place
Yes.
so that we can heal. So the more of that needs to also be occurring. So I see some growth in that area, which I love. Yeah, I'm going on mute now, so there's.
I do have somebody on Facebook that's asked, I'm an alienated mom and I need help. Can anyone help send resources? I'm in Washington State. So what we are doing at Kids Need Both is we're creating a community platform called Hope for Families. And it's a platform not only to support the effectiveness of the professionals, but also to provide those professionals like the resources for the parents and families who need that and they don't know where to go. Like we're all about, let's get all the good guys in one room so that the parents can know that they're getting somebody who's going to help their family, not destroy their family. So I didn't exactly answer your question, Charlie, but anybody who's a panelist who knows a resource in Washington State, of course, we know there's Washington State and then there's the counties and the cities. So that's kind of a broad question, but you can always contact us in a private message and we'll do our best to guide you in that direction.
I have someone, Kyle in Tacoma, Washington. He does parentlink.org. It's called parentlink.org.
Parentlink.org. Got it. Thank you. All right.
There's also, there's one more, Jenna's group, which is Pathways Family Coaching as well. They're in Canada. There's that.
Okay. There we go. All right. Awesome. I would like to loop around to Dr. Burnett. I haven't heard much from Stan. But I also wanted to make sure that Dr. Burnett gets a chance to tell maybe our new coming people about the 5-factor.
I'll be here. Why don't we let the other people finish up who haven't said anything? I want to hear what Stan's doing in Australia. I want a little update.
Okay.
That's okay.
Perfect. All right. Stan, you're on.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads to bring together here. So just quickly, my own alienation journey, it's more than 15 years old now. And I bring that together with my own psychotherapy background. So I've been working with alienated parents, mothers and fathers for the last 10 years. And more recently, despite my protests, increasingly working within our family law system here in Australia, bringing back children and alienated parents together, okay? And so what I'm picking up on here, and also, sorry, the other aspect of this is, like Elise and I are actually doing similar and different PhDs, sharing the same PhD supervisor for enough. I'm looking at parental alienation from a social perspective, or a sociological perspective, and Elise is looking at it from a therapeutic perspective. Just drawing all the threads together, I'm sort of proposing that we're not just addressing a therapeutic problem of wounded parents, we're not just addressing a legal problem of trying to reunify families, we're also addressing a social problem. And so when we do our reunification workshops with parents, what I'm acutely aware of is that just because our family court system here, says you are now the parent of a child you haven't seen for the last 5 years, that doesn't mean that they're parents at a social level. Because one of the things that parental alienation does is that it destroys parenting identity. And so alienated parents have a lot more work to do than any other parents. They've got to recover not just their legal identity, having parental care and responsibility restored to them, they've got to restore a social identity. And one of the things that's come out of my research is this idea that parental identity is annihilated as a fundamental process of alienation at a social level. So most of the targeted parents that I work with, what they're struggling, the question they're asking is, am I still a parent? Now, if your child dies, are you still a parent? Most parents would say yes. If your child goes missing, are you still a parent? Well, yes. Okay. If your child's kidnapped, yes, you're still a parent. There are social responses to all of those cases where parents lose contact with their child because their child is dead, missing, kidnapped. Where something terrible's happened to that child. But there's no organised social response to a parent who has been alienated from their child. Okay? So the other side to that is when we work with alienating parents, and I have to say they don't volunteer to work with us, right? We've got to make them do that through our legal system. And even then, they don't do it willingly. But even for them, their social identity as parents is in question because it's of the way they're using that social identity. So what people like me are trying to do is add a social dimension to parental alienation. It's actually a social issue. It's a social issue of our time. It's very interesting that when parental alienation was first defined back in the 1980s by Dr. Richard Gardner, around that time, people were talking about how alienating society actually was. Well, that's an interesting coincidence, isn't it? That around that same time, he developed the idea of parental alienation. So that's kind of where I'm at. The other thing I want to pick up on is the comments about family violence. Here in Australia, we've had similar incidents over the last few days, quite literally, of men murdering their ex-partners, basically. And in a recent case, a father jumped off a damn wall with his 9-month-old baby, and it's a murder-suicide, and it's been couched in the context of family violence. Here in Australia, we have gendered family violence legislation that's applied specifically to men. So the issue we've got is at the same time that we want to take up the moral high ground of men, some men who are violent, but not all men are violent, we're faced with this ideology that says we are characterologically violent because we are men. So the additional burden that fathers have, and I can only speak in the Australian context, is this idea that you are fundamentally violent because you're a man. At the same time, the last few cases I've worked on in our legal system have all involved fathers recovering their children after years of alienation, despite claims of family violence and despite claims of child sexual abuse. This goes to another issue of, are those claims false? Well, oddly enough, it'd be easier if they were. But the mothers who make those claims believe almost religiously that the abuse happened when it didn't. And they also assume that just because they say that it happened, that our legal system and the practitioners that work within it will automatically accept that as a truth. Okay? The difference is, and this comes back to the 5-factor model that Bill talked about, is that in the parental alienation sphere, we have a way of analysing what actually happened. We have a way of formulating cases on an evidentiary basis. Who did what to whom? How did they say something? What are the narratives that are being used that alienate? So when we build a case for alienation, and what we call it here in Australia more and more is child psychological abuse by alienation. Okay? Those cases can be very strongly evidenced. On the other side, the alienating parent who's claiming family violence and child sexual abuse very often, their evidence reads literally like, I think he did it. There you go. That's all I need to say about it. Okay? Those cases tend to get thrown out. And then we hear in the media about how our family court system is not supporting women who have been abused. It's a horrible social problem because the reality is that more men kill women. That's what the statistics say. Men are more prone to violent action. There's lots of reasons why that is. It's not a simple problem. We have an old saying here in Australia that our national sport is responding to social problems by making them illegal. Okay? It doesn't work particularly well. So we haven't got a solution to that problem. But coming back to my own lived experience just quickly in closing, somewhere out there is a 25-year-old girl who doesn't have a father in her life, who has formed beliefs about her father, me, for which there's no rational basis to do so. But within a social context that says that men are characterologically violent, there's no basis for her to ask a question about that. And that's the big challenge that the ideology of all this poses to us. In capturing the moral high ground, we've got to demonstrate that we simply are not the parents whom we are claimed to be. So it's not a question of denying what we have done or denying the negative, which you can't do. It's demonstrating at the highest level possible by the virtues that we have, that we are not the parents that they believe us to be. And that's been the sort of the thread that's run through, a decade of work with alienated parents, that you just be the best version of yourself at every moral and existential level. So that's my part for today. Hope that's been helpful.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you so much. You just like amazing, good stuff, because we're not making someone the bad guy. We're really trying to be our best self, be someone that the child would want to be in relationship with. And it looks like we've got Elise Price Tobler joined our panel. Yay. Awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Everybody.
She's coming in from Australia. I wanted to, I also wanted to make sure that Todd, you haven't said a peep. So it's your turn. You're up and you're on mute. There we go.
Well, thank you. It's been very interesting. Everybody has, first of all, my name's Todd Shelkey. I'm a small business owner in Tampa. I'm founder of Florida Families, and I'm on the advisory board of Kids Need Both. I'm also a divorced father of 2 young adult children. And when I heard Dawn say, you said this before, Dawn, about your dad saying, I still love your mother. Mm-hmm. I still love my kids, and I still love their mother. And, I think that, I think there might be a punishment aspect to, what a alienating parent is thinking. But I think that the biggest thing gets to what Danica was saying is that, they feel like they're protecting the kids from something. And that could be like Dr. Torrey was saying, physically harm, there's some harm here, there's a threat. This person is harmful. Or I think in so many cases, it's not even a physical threat. It's the threat is the other person's point of view, which reminds me of what Mark said that one day when I can tell my side of the story. I mean, I think there are 3 sides to every story. There's his side, her side, and the truth, and you have to sort it all out. But without both sides of the story, and that's the biggest fear, I think, sometimes. And I think that is what is being protected, is protection from that other perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I did definitely all of it rang true for me. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Todd. You are a valuable part of our group. We meet every Monday to further the projects of Kids Need Both, and in our brainstorming and stuff like that. And I love having you part of that. Let's see here. Dr. Torrey says how a mother protects is different from how a father protects. That is so true. So true. Let's see here. We haven't heard from Caroline. We haven't really heard Junior share. I mean, he's contributed and stuff like that, but share where he comes from. And I don't know if Anne is still on or if she's off camera. But who wants to go next? Caroline?
Her, and I have no idea what to say because I'm so focused
And
on
Elise too.
on.
Okay.
And the questions and the great information. So, I mean, I guess I could just introduce myself to those who don't know me and just kind of give you an idea of how I got here and the work I'm doing. But so my name is Caroline Rina. I went through parental alienation for 20 years. My children are speaking to me now. And the things that I learned, my journey started, I went on a healing journey when I was probably in my late 20s, but it really didn't take off until things started with the alienation with my children. And it was more a journey into me. And that's how I ended up finding out that the answers are in here on the inside. And I was a mess. I mean, I'm talking, for those of you who know what a dark night of the soul is, being on the floor, crashed down, with a cover over your head, screaming and crying. I've been in that space, and my goal was to not let them win me. And so I went through this journey and pushed through it. And I feel like I am on the other side. Of course, the journey never ends, so there's always little things that come up. But as a result, I learned how to do spiritual coaching, and I've started working as a mentor and teacher. And like I said earlier, I help people with grief and anxiety. I was also a protagonist. Get this right, Dawn. I was a protagonist and interviewee in Erasing Family, and some of you have seen it. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. And that movie was actually a turning point for me and a catalyst to some more healing from this. So my thing is all about healing. It's all about self-healing. It's all about working through and connecting with, who we are, and learning how to, I don't remember who Mark was talking about it, but someone had said something else. The anger that we hold when we have gone through something like a divorce, especially when we lose our children, is over the top. And the anger is the thing that keeps us locked in. And what I discovered was, if we can just take that anger and turn it into passion, like we all are doing here, because that's where it came from, at least that's my belief, that we can turn something like this into a healing journey for everyone who is experiencing this, and eventually, and hopefully connect with people and meet them where they're at and guide them, through this process. It's just so important, and I'm grateful to have a couple of or counselors on here, because some of them have been my lifeline, and coaches. So anyway, and I say this every time, Danica, thank you for pulling all of this together, and I'm just so grateful, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. We're happy to have you. Okay, so let's see who wants to share a little bit, Junior or Elise?
I'll share.
Okay.
And I thank you guys for inviting me here, and of course, and with some awesome company, Caroline, Rina, thank you for involving me in your Facebook first and onto others. I enjoy what you do, and Tori, of course, Mark, everyone here, especially Don. Don, you especially give me a perspective in order to have a great relationship I have with my daughter, and to understanding how an alienated child parent does think. And thank you for involving, including me into that world. And that's very important for a lot of us parents that are, potentially alienated, if not kicked against our own will. I come from a situation where, there's constant attempts of brainwashing, gatekeeping, to the point where it is alienation. The 5 factors are there, but they're not recognized, right? Of course. But, I continue on. I do what Mark does as well, involve myself in the school, go around politically. I work with the Canadian Equal Parenting Council here as a political group of lobbyists. Work with another number of different organizations in Canada, to kind of move the chain and to keep my inspirations going, as well as I've seen what it's done to my daughter, what it's done to my family, and I want to help others. And through helping others, it gives me more strength to do the work that I do now, outside of my full-time job. But that's a whole nother story. But the reason why I became more involved is because I want to change. I don't want to sit a victim, but mellow in my trauma. I want to make a difference in people's lives, especially my own family. I'm married. I have 2 other children here, and we're all blessed. And my daughter gets to see that, whenever she is around and wants to enjoy more of that. And that's the best thing that any parent can do, is create a whole other avenue that child can now see that you're living a positive life, right? They don't want to see negative. They want to be in a negative state. They want to see that, the 2 parents are getting along and making things happen. And that's what I'm trying to do, right? And through that, I'm actually showing the other side, what it takes to make things positive, Let's not focus on the path to smooth things forward. And that's what I try to do when talking to other parents. Some of the panelists that are here, they know who I am. I've coached them, and they've coached me in return. Right? It's a whole family affair. So that's where I come from. That's a brief synopsis of who I am and what I'm about. And if there's any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Junior. I appreciate you. All right, let's see here. Elise, welcome from Australia. Thank you for joining us. Share, I think, do I have here? It says here that you were talking about the long-term effects of severe parental alienation and abductions. You want to talk about that?
Yes. Hello, everybody. It's 5:30 here in Australia, so sorry I was a little bit late. I thought you were starting at 6 a.m. So hi, Stan, my Australian counterpart down there, and hello, everybody. Hi, Dawn. Hi, Caroline. Hi, everyone. Hi, Dr. Burnett. It's very nice to see you all. So forgive me if I'm a little bit slow still. I'm still having my first cup of tea. So my name's Elise Price-Tobler. I'm a clinical psychotherapist. So my entire life is around involved with parental alienation. I'm actually an adult child of severe parental alienation and abduction, so I speak on that level. I also I have my own practice, and I speak to adult children and parents of alienation professionally, and I'm also doing a PhD on parental alienation, so I'm studying and trying to design a treatment protocol for adult children, because the symptoms that we can experience can be very diverse and complex, and a lot of the time when we go to seek help from mental health professionals, a lot of the time when we present, they're often quite confused as to what's happening for us, and there can be quite a lack of understanding there. So I also work with Dawn very closely. She's another adult child of severe PA and abduction. So we have the Humanly Possible channel where we interview people from across the world, a lot of adult children and parental alienation specialists. We've got a fantastic interview there with Dr. Burnett if anyone wants to go and have a look at it. And but I will just briefly, I'm from Australia, I study in Australia, work in Australia, and I just wanted to read out some of the effects that can happen to adult children if they're not, if it's not picked up, if they're not worked with when they're little, or when they're adolescent, because some of us slip through the cracks. Children who may or may not be going through high conflict divorce and slip through the cracks and don't receive treatment are a big problem. And currently there's about 3.8 million children in America alone who are experiencing moderate to severe parental alienation. So we really need to start nipping that in the bud, because we do not want to be treating adults later on down the track, because the effects on them can be long-lasting and often absolutely do not go away. So some of the things that adult survivors might experience are expressions of guilt, depressed mood, low self-esteem. They lack self-confidence. They can experience distress and frustration, substance abuse, delinquent behaviour, separation anxiety, suicidal ideations. They can attempt suicide. They can also manifest with sleep and eating disorders, educational difficulties, psychosomatic illness, and fears, and often different phobias. So they also live with a lack of self-esteem, which I already mentioned, lack of trust. And often we can also see a pattern coming through to the generations that are following. So they can also experience rejection from their own children, a lack of belonging, choosing not to have their own children because of their experiences as little ones as well. And they can live with a lot of resentment and bitterness over lost time with alienated parents, and there's a lot of very serious mental health challenges that go along with this. So that's where Dawn's and my work is. And an extra layer on top of severe parental alienation is abduction. So some of us in the high conflict divorce and fight have also been taken from the other parent, and in my case, for instance, we were given different names and taken across the state, and that's a different layer on top of severe parental alienation. So now we have to look at what is our identity, what's happening for us. We're often taken away from all the family that we know. So this is also something that I'm studying and adding to my PhD. So yeah, that's just a big area of interest, particularly for Dawn and I. So yeah, basically, I don't want to bring things down too much, but this is the world that we do live in. So yeah, thank you for listening to me, and I'll just leave it at that at the moment. Yeah.
Well, you pointed something out that a lot of times parents will want to insist on their child testifying and talking to the judge. And they may, but they don't get that they are putting their child in a position of betrayal that may not manifest itself now, but down the road, that can really create such scars in that child's life, especially after the parents, maybe the parents have gotten past the alienation and stuff like that. Then everybody's getting along, but that child is like, I did horrible things. I did horrible things to one parent, and it's my fault. They don't look at it as, well, it was my parent who made me do it. It breaks my heart to see parents just determine that you know, a 12-year-old or whatever speak and, you know, and sway the judge in a court case.
Well, what they don't realise either is that we actually do grow up, and they might stop fighting, but the legacy lives on within us, and it doesn't stop. And a lot of the time what we'll also see is it'll just affect, even at my age, it will affect everything from funerals that we might go to, which is a recent example. They can be arguing still at this age about stuff that's happened 40, 50 years ago. It's like, no, we don't want to hear this anymore. Like, we're trying to heal. We're trying to move past it, and you guys are still carrying this torch. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting. And a lot of people think, I suppose, that once they turn 18, everything's going to be fine. So, and we're here to say it's not, and that's the work that we're doing in this space.
That's right.
Well, I've got a question that's going to come through someone else and through me. It's interesting because I think it affects all parents, and we've even walked through this too. And I believe this is for you, Elise. I don't know for sure. How do you talk to a child who's going through parental alienation?
Yeah, it's a pretty big question. How do we talk to them? Who is we?
How do you talk to a child? I'm assuming it's a parent. I know that, you know, even having gone through everything and my children still talking to me, some days I still have a hard time talking to them. So how do you do it?
Oh, okay. So the biggest thing that worked for me when I reunited with my father after 25 years was him giving me unconditional positive regard and just being able to listen to me without judgment. It's really simple, and sometimes I'll still unload on him. I'll still have things coming through because PTSD is part of who we are, and it'll come through, and my hat is off to him, I tell you, because he listens to me. He gives me space. I can ring him 24/7. I know he's always there, even though he wasn't there for 25 years because of the severe PA or SPA, as we call it. So this is what I say to the parents who are coming in. You've got to remain hopeful. You've got to remain, keep the space open for them. You've got to be a healthy person yourself. You've got to get on with your life. You have to model to the kids that they're safe in your space, because often when we're at home with an alienator, that space is not safe for us. So if we get an opportunity to go to the targeted parent, they just need to give us that unconditional positive regard and just hear us and sit with us and not judge us and not pour any more stuff in our heads. In a nutshell.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that, like I mentioned earlier, how even when I was asking the questions of my father, I came to him and asked him some pretty tough questions, and his response first started with that, first of all, I want you to know that I loved your mother and I still love your mother. So he started me off in a non-defensive position. I didn't feel like I had to defend her. All I needed to do was listen and absorb what he was saying. And it put me in a better place as the child trying to decipher, because when we come to terms with this, when you finally are faced with, I need to decide what's true and who I am really, because we were full of holes. And at least I've talked about this many times and I describe it as, you know, a lot of times you might have seen that picture circling the web where there's it looks like a sculpture of a father, a stone figure holding a child's hand, and they have a bunch of holes in each of them. And what that represents for me is the holes that were inside me were the parts of me that I had missing. And each of those holes were on the outside edges of them had this red inflammation, painful parts that I needed to suppress. So I'm packing those holes with something to make that pain stop. And then when we come back and we start asking the questions, that pain is still there just because we unpack it. It has never been resolved. So it's very important on how we speak to the children to let them, it has to be done very gently. And Barbara also asked a question about how do you help your child recognize that they're a victim and seeking help. And that is, it depends on the child and what they went through. We all have different situations, different events that happened, and we have different levels of pain or anger or understanding. Sometimes we may understand that we just have to survive, or just do whatever we have to survive. We may not like the situation. And then other times we're so racked with the anger that we can't even comprehend what's going on around us and who's right or wrong. We're just mad at everybody. So there's so many different levels to that, but understanding that the pain is still there no matter if we are 5 years old or 50 years old. We still have to address it, and we have to take every single piece and analyze every single thing that we were ever told and determine, is this true? And if it's true, then I have to deal with that. If it's not true, I have to get rid of that, because we can't deal with things that are not something that we can use to heal. And that's a process. It takes a while to go through. So that unconditional positive regard that Elise talks about is the best way for a parent to make sure that their children feel safe for any conversation, and that it's not going to be a retaliatory or another heated discussion, because that is what's going to make them just go back into those holes and cover them back up and just not want to deal with it.
You bring up a lot, because I think that parents, when it's so easy to defend, you got a child that's even an adult child that's asking you questions. Well, questions have a want to be answered. And I think that sometimes the child is asking the question, not necessarily wanting to hear you make their other parent wrong in the matter. They just want, you just got to heal yourself and not be triggered. You got to be Teflon, be able to take whatever it is that they dish out and say, I understand.
Because this is about trust now. Now it's all about trust. Can I trust you? And if you can make me feel comfortable and confident in that I am safe in this kind of conversation, that trust is going to grow exponentially faster than it would if I have to constantly shut it down. Because we, like Elise said, we have this chronic PTSD that follows us through life. And when it starts getting complicated like that, we have to shut it down. If we can't deal with it, our only choice is to shut down. So we need to be able to come out, and we need everybody to have a place that we can exist in a conversation without it becoming that complicated. And sometimes we're asking the question, we're not necessarily asking you to make any kind of excuse. We're asking you straight up. Give us a straight up answer in the most loving and caring, positive regard way that you can. Because at this point, it goes back to that trust. We need to build a trust, and trusting means that you trust me with the truth.
Very good. And you popped up on the screen, so I guess that means you're next.
I apologize. I'm bopping back and forth. We've also got a retreat going on at the Resolution Center, so I'm just so glad to be with y'all.
Awesome. And Anne initiated a vigil, a 3-day vigil, and Friday, Saturday, and this morning, just a prayer vigil to generate all that we're creating right now, this whole positive healing environment of this panel discussion. So thank you very much. Just, do you want to, Anne, you want to share a little bit of your insights or what you do?
Sure. If I could just have 2 minutes, I'll share briefly. And I love what Dawn just talked about, like almost that thick skinness that we need to have as alienated parents, that our kiddos can come to us with anything, any subject, even if it's a sticky subject, a subject that perhaps might make us want to fly off the handle, but we're not going to fly off the handle because we're trying to work on being resilient and being faithful. Briefly on faith, about 7 years ago in a support group in Ohio, I met a gal, And she and I prayed together every single day. We've done this for almost 6 years now. We pray for our exes, we pray for our children, and we pray for our spouses. We pray for our entire community. And that has been one of the most powerful sources of strength for me to get to a healthy place where I am now. So fast forward, I have a conversation with Danica, who also is a person of faith and resilience. And we had a 3-day prayer vigil leading up to today, Parental Alienation Awareness Day, with the goal and the intentionality of praying for peace, grace, and patience. And those 3 days of prayer, I mean, it started the day off great. Just like when I pray with my friend in Ohio, when I pray for my ex, I pray for my children, I pray for my spouse. Lifting that up in community, it is so empowering.
Mm-hmm.
So, like what Danica's doing with this panel, I mean, it brings me to tears. I'm Irish. I'm sorry. I'm an Irish and a woman, and sometimes I cry. But when I look at the list of all the people on this panel and all of the attendees in the audience, and I pray for them all because we're all broken inside. We all have a journey, and those of us with PTSD, you know, we're doing the best we can, but we're all broken. We all have the holes. We just want to make sure our kiddos know that they have a parent who's healthy and whole to come back to.
That's right. Yes.
I love that, Ann.
I want to really quick, because I want to end it with Dr. Burnett, kind of looping back where we started. I want Nathan, because he hasn't spoken and he's not necessarily been in this family stabilization community, but he has been like right there by our side as our technical guru coach. So Nathan, I'd like you to share a little bit, what your part to play is in this.
Thank you, Danica. Well, I have a personal experience. I don't know if it's classified parental alienation, but my mom really tried to destroy my relationship with her father because she was hurt when her relationship with him ended. And instead of finding an amicable way to have a relationship with her children, she tried to weaponize them to hurt my dad. And like that didn't work for me. I was 18 and I discovered for myself, like, wow, I really want to have a relationship with my dad. And I got his point of view, which I hadn't had up until that point. And my whole world shifted inside of me being like, I want to have a relationship with my dad. And that's what we created since I became an adult and was able to get that whole world. What we're creating here, Danica and our whole team, is we've created a social app, a social learning and discovery app. And when I say discovery, I mean the ability for families and parents to come to this app to get access to e-learning materials, to attend events and panels, to join community groups, because I think that's not just in this parental alienation conversation, but I just think generally in society there's a breakdown in community, and we're not having communities that are forwarding the personal development of people. So, we've built an app for Danica that supports that, and you can go to hopeforfamilies.com
.net.
.net/welcome to look at the registration page and if you register for this event, you're actually already registered in the platform, and you can just log in or with the credentials you used to set it up. But I just want to say that this is such an important conversation because I'm the founder of the Hope platform, and we're basically a movement of movements. And I'm really passionate about families having workability, because if you look at anything, whether it's drug addiction, which is a serious thing we're looking at taking on, you're looking at any breakdown, it really comes back to what is their family like? Were they loved? Were they, what does that look like? And so, the platform's really just about facilitating collaboration with you, the professionals, and we have a directory. So by centralizing not just the community aspect, the social aspect, and the learning aspect, but also having a directory of professionals, which we'd like to have all be listed, and some of you are already listed, by having that available, because people are looking for resources, right? And we want to make sure we're directing them to people that are actually going to produce value for them, that aren't going to direct them down a $30,000 1-year contentious divorce, but actually can help them to get at the root of what they want to accomplish at the next stage of their life and to have a healthy family, even if it means separation, and that's okay. But we need to have a movement. We need to have a centralization of these resources, whether it's the learning modules, whether it's the events, the community, or the directory of it all. So, we want to invite you to be a part of the team. We'd like to also, as panelists, we'd like to have more conversations like this, actually having more live streams and broadcasts. I get having 14 people in here. We don't all get to talk all that much, but maybe we can do a series over the next couple months, and we can do 2 or 3 of you at a time, and that way there's a more expansiveness and we can dive deep with each of you. But those are some of the collaborations we like to create, and ultimately it's about collaboration. It's like, how can we work together to make this work? And the marketplace is plenty big for all of us. I think, especially considering how much money gets washed out in divorce, I think there's just plenty of work at this stage to be done. So we want to foster collaborative partnerships with each of you. And I think that's why we're all here. So that's all I want to share. If anyone else wants to say anything. Thank you.
Hey, Danica?
Yes.
Before, I know we want to close with Dr. Burnett, but could I say a few words just about our work together?
Of course.
The Florida Families, it's the group that I founded with 2 other partners. We're an alternative to adversarial family court litigation that helps parents who are contemplating divorce make better informed decisions. We take our inspiration from a quote from Buckminster Fuller, which says, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the old model, the existing model, obsolete." And so Florida Families is a community outreach group. And Kids Need Both brings vetted professionals, resources who are all about empowering parents, and including keeping them out of family court if possible. So it's a little different angle taking the approach that we're taking together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love the partnerships. I think from 20 years ago when I was seeking resources and just desperate for anything and everything, it was difficult to find that. And my mission 20 years ago was to pool everything together, get everything together and then I sort of passed it forward and said, here, I've collaborated. And that was when I just barely knew about web pages and stuff like that. And I put all the resources I found on one page. So this is definitely, 20 years down the road creating this. And it's not launched yet. It's in pre-launch phase. So the goal is, so you guys are the first to kind of really know about it. All right. So, yeah.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
The name of the game nowadays with all the internet and stuff is content. And I mean, how many of us get overwhelmed with creating content, whether it's video, broadcasting? It's just too much. You got to create, and it's just like you're spread thin. Well, the idea is we can work together to create content, and that's what we've been doing in my network, and that's what Danica's starting to do, is creating a syndicate of content, and we work together to create the content, and we also work together to share the content. And we found the secret to virality, or the secret to reaching and penetrating the market, is working together to share across the entire community. So, that's why I think ultimately this is going to be effective, is because we're working together to get the message out, to get the message that this is even a possibility, that there's another way. Exactly.
I don't need to be, I've got lots of recognition on my wall, but it's not really, to me, I'm thinking if I could forward the expertise of all of you panelists in the room, then my voice gets expanded exponentially because I'm speaking about your event and, you know, what you have, your book and stuff like that. And if I can do that for you guys, we all win. All right, so last 3 minutes, and I want Dr. Burnett to share what he shared at the very beginning for those who missed out. Go ahead.
Well, y'all, this has been a great way to spend some time on Parental Alienation Awareness Day, and thanks to Danica. Thanks for all these wonderful ideas that have come up from Mark and Tori and Dawn, and then Nathan had some really good ideas. My little tiny corner of all this big picture is in writing articles and chapters. And the thing that Amy Baker and I have been pushing the last few years is a method for diagnosing parental alienation, which we call the 5-factor model for the diagnosis of parental alienation. And if you want the article itself, the easiest way to get in touch with me is to go to the website, Parental Alienation Study Group website, which is pasg.info, I-N-F-O. So I'll give you a real quick rundown of the 5 factors in the 5-factor model. First of all, the child is rejecting a relationship with one of the parents. Secondly, the child used to have a good relationship with the parent. Thirdly, it's not because of abuse or neglect on the part of that parent. In other words, the parent is a good parent that the child is now rejecting for without a good reason. Fourth are the alienating behaviors. But there's plenty of research on these, but we typically count 17 common alienating behaviors, and you have to have some of them. You don't have to have all of them, but you have to have some of them for factor 4. And factor 5 are the 8 behavioral signs or symptoms of alienation in the child. These are the same 8 things that Richard Gardner talked about in 1985, and we still use the same criteria. So what's interesting is that all 3 members of the triad are involved in these factors: the mom, the dad, the child. And the other thing that's really important is that this is not a whole new invention. That Amy and I have simply collapsed together the ideas that have been published for more than 30 years. And so we try to make it systematic, to make it look like it is a coherent whole, and that both clinicians can use it in making the diagnosis, and in court, it can be used in court for making the diagnosis. So that's my little spiel. But this has been a great activity this afternoon, and we appreciate everybody's involvement, and hope to see you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Burnett. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you for our wonderful panelists that I'm sure we'll be in touch again very soon. Our goal is to do a panel discussion once a month. This is the first of 12 over the next 12 months. So, and we're going to try to get different ones, and maybe we'll size it down to a smaller group so we can actually talk about a specific topic. Who knows? Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And remember, April 25th is Parental Alienation Awareness Day, and there's such a group, such a huge community there for you. Have a great evening.
Say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good work, Lucy.